The reference image is up. We're going to start this model. We're going to actually create it using a polycube. Now for that polycube, I want to keep it basic. I actually want to start this off at a split of about 4 and 4. So we're going to go 4 splits overall, and it's going to keep it relatively manageable for the time being. I'm going to scale this cube up to match the actual size. So using R, I've scaled it up to match the rough size of the hammer. So I'm going to use that on the side view here. Now you can see that my cube is actually half transparent. To do that, I've turned the shading on X-ray, which allows me to see through the object. Helps me to actually get a bit of an understanding of where I'm making my adjustments. So I'm going to adjust this cube to the rough shape and the rough size of the hammer, and it's going to be the easiest time to actually do this all at once. Once I've done the back view, I'm going to do it on the side view as well. And on the side view this time, I'm going to stretch it out. I'm not going to stretch it to all the way here. I'm just going to stretch it to the main body of it for the time being. It's going to make it easier to work with for what we've got to do. Now, we can always add more lines in later, but since it's simple right now, it's going to be easy to make some adjustments. What we're going to do is for this line here, I've just selected it. You can either select it with the edge or the vertex. Vertex might be easier to drag select and move it up to that approximate line where that style starts. I'm going to select it here as well. Now, a great understanding of this is if you drag select, you're going to select all of them around the object. So I'm dragging that down. I've got 1 in the middle, 2 on the edges. Make it easier, I'm also going to make some slight more adjustments there. Drag that one on top. And slight adjustments here again. That makes it super easy for me. Now I'm going to go into the side view. Make sure that those are pretty much lined up, which they are, which they're pretty close to as well. Now, these corners, we know that Thor's hammer is not square edged, so I'm going to push those to match the actual shape right there. Now I've made a mistake on that one. I didn't actually select it all the way on the other side, so drag select so I can select the one on the other side as well. Same here, drag select. Now if you want to make these even instead of slightly different like I've done, I'm going to go backwards here. I'm going to shift select now with a drag on all these corners. Hit R, and then I'm just do the global, which is going to pull them in. The global didn't work so well, so maybe just, yep, just the side point perspective. If we go to our 3D view, then we can see that we have our rough body of this shape, and it's looking good so far. Now notice on that reference image that we have, it actually has an indentation there, and also an extrusion on the underside. So to make that indentation, what we're going to do is we're going to go to face selection. We're going to select these faces here. And we're going to go Command E, which is extrude. If you want to also find that later on, you can find it in Edit Mesh if you don't want to use shortcuts. I'm going to extrude that inwards. I'm also going to bring it inwards there. Now, I've just thought of it. That's not the right shape. I'm actually going to Command Z it. Cancel. And the reason I'm doing that is because it's not fully encompassing of showing that it actually is indented on the edges as well. So I'm going to select all of these. And then extrude it inwards. I'm then going to use that R selection to drag those edges in a bit to make it look a bit more stylized and smooth that transitional cut. On the sides, they're a bit sharper edged. Now to make it a bit more noticeable here, what we can do as well is we can add an additional edge loop here and here to make that flow inwards. Now, I'll show you how to do that in a minute. I want to actually do the other side first while it's nice and easy without additional loops. I'm going to edit this side with the same process, but this time I want to, let's make it a bit, I want to actually just do the center 4. Now that grid gets in the way, so I'm going to go to show, I'm going to go to grid, and I'm going to get rid of it. Make my selection of those 4, which match that sort of shape, and then I'm going to just go Command E, and I'm going to bring it out a little bit. Not a lot, just a little bit. Once that's done, click away. This time I'm now going to fix this part, which I said I was going to fix, by making it able to be visible from the actual outside with the cut in. So I'm going to use something called Insert Edge Loop here, which is found in Mesh Tools. Insert Edge Loop is going to allow me to make some additional lines through the actual shape. It's a good idea to do this on the side view so you can make it even. You can see how I've made that one slightly not even, so I have to make some adjustments. If the X-ray view is getting in your way to make those adjustments, just turn it off for the time being, and then you can make those adjustments. Now, I am going to now go to vertex selection, select this one and this one with the drag selection, so it actually does both sides, and also the middle one as well. I'm going to drag it downwards just a fraction. That way we can now actually have a impact and see the actual indentation on the side. What we can do is a very similar effect on the top here with this one, and we can do a insert edge loop over here this time, and we can do it quite over OP version where we cut it here, here. I'll go on the top view so it's easier. It's not going to be easy because it's not the top view, it's the bottom view. And we will also go here and here. Now we've done a lot there, and that's just to really show a clear definition of the hard edge of the shape. And I'll show you what I mean by that. So when we go into the 3D view and we go into object mode now, by adding these extra lines, it makes that really sharp. Check out how curved this edge will get compared to these edges that has 3 lines for it. That'll just smooth out to a round shape, while this will smooth out to more of a squared round shape. Go to object mode, click away. You can see how that clear definition is there rather than not there. That's because of the additional loops that we've made, or the additional lines. To make them harder edges, we actually have to add more lines later on. So we have our rough shape. of the outside perspective now. We have our indentation, we have our extrusion. If we want to, now we would need to make those side bits though. Okay, so those side bits are pretty easy to make. What you're going to do is we are going to do two things. We are going to select this face here and this face here, and we're going to extrude outwards. We need to make sure we select only the side view faces. So to make this a little bit of a trick and easier, I'm going to select everything at once on the face view with a shift, drag selection, and then from here on the inside where I've done those selection lines, I'm going to shift it and still hold that select, and that way it's going to deselect that area. And now I should have only the sides selected. I'm double checking just in case. Now I'm going to extrude them outwards using Command E, and I am going to press R instead of the extrusion. So when I pull these out, they're going to pull out that way now instead. Then use the global scale, which will bring it inwards on their own faces. And then we actually start to make the right type of shape. And it's just a matter of global scaling it and pulling it out until continuously until you get the rough shape of what you need. Once we have that rough shape, I'm going to go to that side view. I'm going to turn on the X-ray mode. I'm going to get off the extrusion scale, and this time I am going to start to use the vertex adjustments again. So I'm going to select the outside there, shift select on both sides. And now that I'm in this sort of perspective view, I can make more adjustments. And try and line them up a bit better. Now that we've done that, I'm going to shift select here and here. I'm going to try and keep it as even and symmetrical as possible. So whatever change I make on one side, I make on the other. And I'm adjusting shift select here and shift select here. And I'm going to bring it down a little bit. Now just a tip, if you can't see the arrows, you can always press the minuses and the pluses to actually make those pivots or draggers a bit more visible or less visible. I know that's not perfectly aligned, however I want this to be symmetrical rather than making adjustments right now. It doesn't look like the drawing is perfectly symmetrical. So that's made the adjustments on the top. Let's make them on the bottom as well. So select that, and we can drag that to those sort of line marks there. Select this corner here and this corner here, and we can drag them slightly up. Now we can see that this actually has this sort of extrusion again there, which I didn't actually notice before. So to fix that, what we can do is we can add two edge loops. One here and one here, and this will actually make it really good because this will give a solid definition of the change in roundness. I'm actually going to do a triple line here to do that as well on the other side. But while we have that perspective, I'm going to go to vertex selection, select, zoom in a bit for this one, vertex. Oh, I'm on edge loop still, so make sure you click that arrow, select that vertex, shift select that vertex, and then drag them there, and that should help it a little bit. I'm just going to go on the other side now, just in case the shift select didn't work properly, and ensure that it did. Ah, it did, so it's fine. So now we have that harder edge on there as well. Let's see how that changes it when we go to object mode and we change our actual viewpoint. So that's now blocked, low poly view, high poly view. So we can see a clear definition there, but everything else is too round still. So we need to actually change that a bit still. So to change that, what we're going to do is we're going to add more edge loops to the edges, of course. So I'm going to go into edge mode again, mesh tools, edge loop. I'm going to add edges on the outside perspective of the hammer now. I'm also going to turn these off for a second. It's going to make it a bit easier for me to work. Okay. I'm going to add a clearer definition here. On there. On there. There. Whatever we do on one side, we try and match on the other. And that way it just helps us with our modeling, keeping everything symmetrical and even. Anything that actually has a defined edge, or needs a defined edge, needs an additional edge loop. This is up to your desire or your stylized feature. It'll just help with the actual rendering of the shape later on. And if you're not sure where it needs to be, you can just go object mode, click on and away, click on again. That is the blocky view, that is the hard edged view, and you can see how it's starting to take a bit more shape now. But I can see that these edges here are still too round, and I want them more geometric, so I need to add a few more edge loops here. And that's because I think the edge loops need to be on this side of it. So mesh tools, edge, oops, wrong tool, edge loop. We'll see what happens if I click this one here. Yep, that one would probably work. And here, that one will probably work. And we'll click here as well. Now you don't want to go overboard. I think I might be going a little bit overboard here, but it should hold the rough shape now a lot better. We go into 3, object mode, and it does look a lot more clearly defined now on those edges. There's no real curvature or there might be a bit, that might be a bit too curved on those corners here and here. We can fix that up. On the bottom though, I like that sort of style. I'm happy with that. I'm just going to fix up those top corners. And that is probably because there's additional edge loops here and here, but there's none on the inside. So what we're going to do is more edge loops. So we're going to go here, bring it up. We're going to go one on this edge, one on this edge. So that should be sharper and that should be sharper. One additional here, one additional here. So the rule of it basically is if there's one line, it's going to curve. If there's 3 lines, it's still going to curve, but it's only going to curve between those 2 points of perspective. So that should be pretty good, except we need one more here, and one more here. I think that'll do. we'll have a little look now. So object mode, we go 1, whoops, 3, yeah, and that's a nice sharp edge there. It's looking a lot better already. Okay, so we have that rough design ready to go. It's looking really good so far. Now we can bring back our perspectives. We can see that we have a bit of an indentation on the edges there. I'm going to ignore this one, I think, because we can add that in as an image file, but those ones look like a bit more indented. And if we look at the actual front perspective, there's indentations on these sides too. Now, let's do that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go face selection. There's going to be a ton of faces to select, guys, because we've smoothed all the edges. Kind of. Alright, so what we're going to do now is we're going to select them individually, unfortunately. Just so we don't make any mistakes. I think that's alright. Make sure to go around your object. Make sure you haven't accidentally selected anywhere else. Now, to keep this as a hard edge indentation, instead of doing edge loops, what we can do is here we can go Command E for extrusion, and we can extrude once inwards to start that additional line, and then press either G or Command E again. G repeats the tools, Command E does a second extrusion, so I'm going to repeat the same last tool, G, and I'm going to have a second indentation line there. And on the final one, I'm going to go G again, and this time, instead of extruding inwards, I'm going to use the global scale to go inwards there. And also on the edges, so I don't have double layers. Oh, I've done that too harshly, I think. So I'm going to go out of that one. And just go Command B, Command V a little bit. There we go. We got one. That's one. That's two. Let's smooth it. Let's have a look. See how those edges aren't sharp. Means we need more edge loops eventually. And we can fix that since we got a lot of edge loops already. I didn't want to add more, but oh well. So we go on here. We go back to that one perspective. It's gonna, instead of doing more now though, we're gonna just fix up all the others. See how they're going inwards that way? If you don't want them to go inwards that way, what you can do is just, instead of extruding it, you can just go W instead. W is going to center it more, and you're going to have to make some slight adjustments. I'm going to always do 2 extrusions with these, and with those second extrusions, after that's done, I'm going to do edge loops on the edges around the perspectives to keep them nice and sharp. I'm going to fast forward this process so you guys don't have to watch all of it, but it's pretty much the same as I'm doing now. So at this point, I've now added a ton more edge loops around the surface areas and corners of all the extrusion points. This is giving me a general view. Now this is the smooth view, and this is the geometric view. So they're almost at this point now the same sort of viewpoint, which is pretty good. So it is turning more into a high poly model, but this is still probably relatively low poly, as you can see with such large gaps. I have done 3 or 4 saves at this point, and I've also saved it under multiple file names in case there is a crash and I lose one of my documents. So let's see how we are going in comparison so far. We've got our indentations on the edges, we've got our subtle indentation underneath, we have our extrusion on the top, and it's looking pretty good. I'm pretty content with that at this stage. Now, if we were going to make this a 3D printable file, we might want to consider doing some sort of generic pattern that simulates this, or something similar enough. However, it's a very excruciating process to do something so organic within the hammer of a 3D model without a 3D scanner, or without a proper reference from that. So I'm going to leave this and we're just going to texture it in at a later date. Now, we've done the hammer's head. It's now time to add our grid back. Add our grid back, and it's time to start trying to make that hammer's handle. The hammer's handle should be a relatively easier process. A lot of this sort of more intricate detailing, since they're extrusions, we might try and actually do them as extrusions, as separate areas, which might make it a bit more tricky, but it's going to have some really good interest and detail. So what we're lucky with is, even though we've done so many edge loops here and here to make all these defined shapes, we still have a relatively nice space in the center that has hardly any edge loops or really low poly area to start with, and that's going to make it easier for us to make that handle. So to start this off, I'm going to just grab these faces here, and I'm just going to do a basic extrusion to start it off. And this perspective is fine at this moment, just because I want to bring it up a little bit, not too much. And the reason being, the main focus of this is to try and make a separate layer for the handle to start with, so I'm not interfering with any existing mesh or wireframe structure. So now that we have that, I'm going to try and make this a spherical shape. Let's check out the actual starting point. Oh no, we don't need to, we need to make it a cone first. But it still has a spherical shape. So I'm going to go to the top view for this spherical shape. I'm going to go into the vertex selection and shift select all 4 corners. Hit R, and I'm going to bring it in there. Now I'm going to add to my selections the outsides and then bring them more in. And we're getting to more of a shape that I want. Bring those outside ones out. And I'll pretty much leave it there for the time being. And we'll add more in as we go on. Now, we've got those faces selected. I'm going to go into my side view. They're still selected. I'm going to shift my point of view up to the top here. Now I'm going to go extrusion. I keep getting that rainbow wheel of death. I've got too many background programs on. So if you have background programs on, guys, you know you need to probably turn them off. Now with that extrusion, I've already noticed that the cone structure that I'm starting with is way too narrow. So I'm going to go to my edge loop selection, double tap it so it selects that whole round away, and I'm going to straight away global scale widen that. And I'm going to go back into this perspective and I'm going to see that global scale widening and see how it sort of matches up a bit better. I'm happy with that for the time being. I'm actually going to shrink. Oh, no, I'm not going to do that one. I'm then going to shrink. I'm on the edges, that's why. I need to go to those faces. Oh, guys, that's something I want to show. So I've broken this model. Those dark shadows there indicate that I've got mesh over the top. So to fix that, I need to firstly, either if you've gone too far, Control Z, right? Bring all this mesh back in and or bring the outside mesh around it outwards. Now this is when you can go on the inside of your shape, and on the inside you can start to push them back out. And this is when it gets a little bit messy sometimes, but in the end it's usually worth it because we're trying to repair things that we've done. And it's just about trying to solve solutions. So that part's already fixed. If you catch it early, it's not too bad to try and resolve. The further you go in though, then it gets a bit messy. And go back on to, the top of the object to see what we've done. Still a bit broken. There's still a vertex on the underside here that isn't liking what we're doing. So I'm going to move that one there. Bring that one back. 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 Alright, so that's all fixed up now. It's not symmetrical, but it has solved our issue. So, what we're going to do, we're going to go to our face selection, make sure they're selected, go to our side view. Since they're selected, I'm going to go R to scale it out a bit more. And we are going to, first things first actually, before we go to that face selection, I'm going to make sure that I've already prepped what I need to have that shape to be. I can see that we have a bevel to start it off with. So that bevel, which is going to start it off with, we're going to have to ensure that we've selected all of these. Need to bring it slightly down to start, and we're going to extrude up. Only a quick straight one at this point. It actually goes slightly more further out at this point, so I'm going to global it out. Hit G for a second extrude. Bring it up. And then global it back in a little bit. And that creates that bevel that I want. Now, before we continue, there's one more I want to do before I take a break, and we do the rest of the handle next time. So I'm going to start it and bring it up to that first point and set it up for all the extrusions that are to come. That way, when we start extruding that handle, we can keep that pattern going as it goes. Now we can make sure that we're keeping the rough shape. Hopefully we get lucky, and it is. And I think we're being pretty lucky with that. I'm content with that, so that's fine.